So how do you create an entire D&D campaign? You know, a series of adventures that spans levels 1 through 15 or maybe even through level 20. In this video, I'm going to walk through how I create campaigns for the groups that I run. Hey, Luke Hart here. I have been a Dungeon Master since high school, and my goal with this channel is to help other Dungeon Masters to get them information and resources that's going to help them run awesome games. So if you're looking to level up your game, roll a crit on that subscribe button down below. Now this video is going to be part 1 of 2 of creating a campaign, and in this video I'm just going to explain how I go about creating a campaign. And then in part 2, which I plan on releasing next week, we're going to actually create a campaign following the steps that I go over in this video. And once that video is out, I will update the description down below and this card up here. And before I jump in, I do want to preface this a little bit. Creating a campaign is a pretty large topic, and it's unlikely that I'm going to be able to give it a thorough treatment in just 2 videos. So if you think I left something out or you have questions about this, please let me know down in the comments. Now the first thing that I want to do is simply define a campaign before we start talking about how to create one. A campaign is just a series of different adventure arcs. And an adventure arc is simply a series of adventures that are connected by a single overarching story that brings it all together. Now an adventure is self-contained and usually consists of one objective, for instance, stop the bandits from raiding caravans along the road, consists of just one dungeon. In this case, it might be the bandit hideout, and can usually be completed in just a few game sessions. And then what I do is I have one adventure arc be the main adventure arc, and this is the principal plot that drives the entire campaign. Alright, as an example adventure arc, you might have the Sword Coast Guard ridding the Sword Coast, because that's what they guard, of a bunch of evil hags. You might have a sea hag, a green hag, an anise hag, a beer hag, and there probably are some more hags out there, but there could be a series of hags, right, that need to be dealt with. And that is the overarching plot. That's your main adventure arc that would drive your campaign. And then taking care of each of those hags could be its own self-contained adventure within itself. And the hag, whether it's the green hag or a night hag, which is the one I forgot to mention, that could be like a mini-boss that caps that adventure. And then your final adventure, like the campaign finale, would be some sort of like main villain that's been driving this whole thing. That might be a powerful archdevil or demon lord or something out of Mordekainen's Tome of Foes, or it might be a custom villain that you decide. It might be a circle of hags working together. Oh. And that would be your main adventure arc. And Orange here has been rubbing against my tripod, so I figure I will put him on video for a brief moment so you can all see how adorable he is. Alright, real quick, down in the comments, let me know what the main adventure arc was of a game that you designed, or maybe one that you played in that you really enjoyed. Now, the other type of adventure arc that you're going to have in your campaign are character adventure arcs, which is what I kind of call them. And what they are, basically, are adventure arcs that happen based upon character backstories. It could be based upon PC motivations, things that they want to do as part of their adventuring career. Or, and this is my personal favorite, they could be adventure arcs that are based upon stuff that the characters and the players have kind of stirred up in the game world based upon their own decisions. This is basically when they do something and you later have it come back around to bite them and cause complications in their lives. This is one of my personal favorites, and my players in my games know that. And the reason you want to have these character arcs in your campaign is that it gives the players something personal to do besides just pursue some arbitrary villain that the DM designated. And the beautiful thing here is that the main adventure arc allows the Dungeon Master to have his little plot and using his villains and the things that he kind of digs and likes and wants to do. And then the character adventure arcs allow the players to have the things that they want to do, the things that are personal and exciting to them. And so there's this happy little combination of both the players and the Dungeon Master being able to do things in the game that they really want to do. Alright, I'm going to crack through some examples of character arcs for you. The first one is you might have a player who has a long-lost mother that he's trying to find, and so you might create a series of adventures where he is trying to find his mother. Or let's say that along the course of their adventures, the PCs all piss off a dragon turtle, they loot it of all of its treasure, and then run away without actually defeating or killing the dragon turtle. And then let's just say the dragon turtle, who wants all of her treasure back, begins hiring and sending mercenaries after the characters. And during the course of the main character arc, these mercenaries keep on arriving and attacking the players and trying to get the magical items back. And this keeps on going on and on and on, even as the players are going along the other arc in the campaign, until eventually the players say, you know what, if we don't go and take care of this dragon turtle, these mercenaries are going to keep coming again and again and again. And so that right there would be a nice little side thing that's brewing there as other adventure arcs are progressing, that finally the players come around and finally take care of it. But whatever it is, the key here is that it is not part of the main adventure arc. Instead, there are things that come up as a result of the player's actions or from their backstories. And these things can be standalone adventures as well. Rescuing your mother from an evil necromancer doesn't have to take an entire series of adventures. That doesn't have to be an entire character arc. That could just be one single adventure that the group goes on. Okay, now let's look at some guidelines for designing that main adventure arc. The first thing is that you're going to want to have your main adventure arc span several levels. Like we mentioned at the very beginning of the video, that you might be doing a campaign from levels 1 to 15. So that main adventure arc needs to span those levels. Now, you'll notice in the example of the hags, those hags all have different challenge ratings. That means that as the heroes level up and they progress through the campaign, they will be taking on more and more powerful hags as they go, and the hag's minions will get more powerful too. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is go through the steps that I follow for creating a main adventure arc. But before I do that, I just want to let you guys know that my latest adventure is out on DriveThruRPG, so you guys can go check that out if you like. I will put a link to it down in the description. Alright, so how do I create a main adventure arc? The very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the monster manual, Volo's Guide to Monsters, Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, and I'm going to start browsing through them and kind of getting an idea of the different sorts of monsters that I want to have in my campaign. And I'm going to be honest with you, browsing through all of the different monsters is really inspiring to me and really gets me amped up and excited and gives me lots of cool ideas for the different things that I can do in a campaign. Now, as you're browsing through the monsters, it is a good idea to keep a lookout for different monsters that would naturally be working together. For instance, you might have a bunch of kobolds that are ultimately working with a dragon, or if you're looking more along the lines of goblins and stuff, you might have just normal goblins working with like wargs and wolves and ultimately hobgoblins, bugbears, and all that kind of thing. But if the monsters don't have a natural relationship, that's okay too, because part of the campaign creation process is going to be discovering and figuring out why all of your disparate monsters are working together. But what I do as I'm going through the monster manual and whatnot is to try to keep an eye out for monsters that I think would work really well as villains and others that would work well as minions. So for instance, for villains, I'm looking at perhaps higher challenge ratings. You know, the hags in this example might be the villains. Circles of hags will up their challenge rating dramatically. And then they're going to have minions that work along with them. You might have red caps, or what are those things? Meanlocks. A bunch of different types of like fae that are working with them. Now what I've found is that the lore books, especially Volo's Guide to Monsters, and even the descriptions in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes and the Monster Manual are super helpful for determining what sorts of minions certain villains, like hags for instance, might have. And then, once I've selected the different monsters that I want to have in the campaign, I start asking myself, why? Why are these monsters working together? What do they want to accomplish? What is their goal, their motivation? What drives them? And then you ask yourself the question, what are they doing in the world to accomplish that goal? Now, this should be something that causes conflict in the world, because that is the conflict that you're going to present to the players, to their PCs, for them to resolve. Now here's the thing, the answer to this does not have to be super complicated or clever. It can be something as simple as the hags wanting to siphon soul energy from mortals in order to empower their leader, a powerful archdevil in the Nine Hells. So for instance, Annis hags would be corrupting children in order to steal their souls for their devil leader. And night hags would be giving nightmares to people and using that to corrupt people and steal their souls. Now, clever and cool ideas are spectacular if you have one, but some of the greatest campaigns can be run based on a very simple plot. Take this evil ring to a volcano and drop it in to destroy the big bad. Now that's not complicated at all, but a great story came out of it. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing some more granular planning. So I have a bunch of monsters that I want to use, and they span a bunch of different challenge ratings. I'm going to start grouping together the villains with their minions and start laying them out along this like level progression so that as the heroes go from level 1 to 15 or whatever, I have these groups of villains and minions kind of set up along the way. And this is what forms your main character arc. So for instance, the first adventure deals with a sea hag and her Sawagan cronies. Next is a green hag and a lair of meanlocks. And then a night hag with some appropriate minions. And then as you're creating adventures from the villain and the minion, you want to start to gauge at what level you want your players to encounter those adventures. Now this is all just rough planning, because what you're going to do is when you actually design the adventure, you will have a pretty good idea of what level the PCs are at, and at that time you can fine-tune the adventure for their level. Now again, this is just very rough planning because it's going to be very difficult potentially to predict at what level the PCs are going to be for these adventures, because it depends on various things such as, are you using milestone experience points, are you using traditional way of awarding experience points, and how many of these character arcs are the PCs going to go on as well as they're going along the path of this main adventure. Alright, now let's talk about creating the character arcs. This process is very similar to creating the main adventure arc with some differences. The first thing I'm going to do is comb any of the backstories that my players have provided me with, because a lot of times by combing a PC's backstory, I will find ready-to-go adventures within them. All I need to do is flesh them out a little bit and add some details. And the beautiful thing about using PC backstories to inform adventure arcs is that not only did they do a little bit of the work for you and get the idea for the adventure, but it also is something very personal to them, and I guarantee you your players will appreciate it. Second of all, through all of the game sessions at all times during the game, I am always on the lookout for anything that the players, the PCs, might do that would have consequences in the game world. Because when they do crazy things that might have severe or even slight consequences, those things might be the starting point for a really awesome adventure. For instance, let's say the PCs pissed off the Guild of Apothecaries and Physicians, and now that guild is making the PCs' lives difficult in town, and in order to take care of whatever it is they did, they need to work with the Guild of Apothecaries and Physicians and perhaps even go on an adventure for them as a way to make things right. And the thing is, doing this not only makes your world feel like it's living and breathing, but it also makes your players feel like their decisions and actions actually matter. Finally, I will create small adventure arcs or standalone adventures on a whim. If I have like a cool idea, or I was like browsing one of the monster books and was like, I just want to have this cool monster here. And here's what you want to do with your character adventure arcs. You want to intersperse them with the main adventure arc. So the heroes might go over and defeat that Sawagan lair and the Sea Hag mini-boss, and then after that they might have to go on a fetch quest to deal with the Guild of Apothecaries and Physicians that they ended up pissing off. And then at that point they go take care of another one of these hags, and then you draw in a series of adventures that has to do with one of their backstories. And this is how you get your main adventure arc to span the entire campaign. It also keeps your campaign fresh and interesting because the players aren't only playing one single plot line. Now, once you have your campaign planned out, the next step is going to be creating the individual adventures. Now, I made an entire video about creating adventures. I will put a link up here somewhere in the card to that, just in case you find that helpful. My advice, however, is not to create all of the adventures in advance, right? What you want to do is create them just in time. Create them just before your players are about to run them. The thing is that in Dungeons & Dragons, things are always changing, and the way that your campaign starts going, it might not necessarily go that way. And so what you don't want to do is spend all of the time and effort creating all of these detailed adventures only to not use them. And so this just-in-time approach is going to help you avoid doing a lot of work for nothing. By the way, if you have a question about DMing or have a problem in your game, please hit me up in the comments. I'm always happy to help. If you found this video useful, hit that thumbs up button and share it with someone who might find it helpful. And until next time, let's play D&D.